Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the special council meeting for Monday, July 24th. I'd like to first recognize that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nations. I'd like to call the special meeting of council to order. Introduction of late items, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. On the addendum for the special council meeting this evening, we have the replacement of the minutes of the regular council meeting held in the Shaw Auditorium on June the 19th, 2017, and we're adding a delegation from Mr. Robert Fuller to speak to item 14A, Councillor Kipp reconsideration.
Thank you very much. Does council have any more? Councillor Kipp.
Yes, Mr. Leon Cake would like to speak to an issue. It's not related to items on the agenda, but there is an issue on the agenda that speaks to that item. So it would be under, I imagine, the, where is it? Is it this? Oh, sorry. It might be at the next meeting because there's two agendas. Right. Sorry. My mistake because there's two agendas here.
Thank you. Thank you. Seeing no more, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, please? Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Can we have a motion for the adoption of the minutes?
Of the minutes of June 19th at 4:30 and June 19th at 7 p.m.
Thank you very much. You're moving A and B together.
Yes.
Seconded by Councillor Kipp. Thank you. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the introduction of Councillor Cheryl Dawn Armstrong. Ms. Gurley.
Thank you, Your Worship. It is my pleasure, and I'm sure council's as well, to welcome Ms. Cheryl Armstrong, our newest member of council, in her inaugural meeting this evening. So welcome, Cheryl.
We can clap. Thank you and welcome aboard. Next item, municipal by-election results. There is a recommendation on page 17.
Recommendation dated July 24th, 2017.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Kipp. Discussion, seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, update acting mayor schedule, to be introduced by Ms. Curry.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to obtain council approval on the acting mayor schedule, and it is proposed that council approve Councillor Armstrong's acting mayor term as September 19th, 2017 to November 2nd, 2017, and amend the acting mayor schedule to reflect this change.
Thank you very much.
I would so move that council approve the amended acting mayor schedule.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Fuller. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Curry, on this item, I noticed we haven't looked at or addressed the appointment of the alternate directors to the regional district. Do you expect to bring that forward?
Normally that comes forward in October because the vacancy happened back. We dealt with it then, so normally we wouldn't deal with it again until October, November, unless council directs otherwise.
Thank you. So the next item is under bylaws, and that's Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw 2017, number 7234.02. There's a motion on page 24.
Amendment Bylaw 2017-7234.02 to amend the 2017 to 2021 financial plan be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Bestwick? Nothing. No, thank you. Thank you. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is down into 14. Councillor Kipp. Reconsideration of motions related to opportunities for use of city-owned land at 801, 1150, and 1151 Nanaimo Lakes Road, and it's to be introduced by Mr. Richard Harding, Director of Parks and Recreation.
If I can, would you like to say something? I apologize for missing the last meeting that this came forward. Just an issue that came up. I had to leave the meeting. I wasn't available for it. So I apologize to the public for that and running this second time through, but With this, I hope to reconsider this motion and have the opportunity, as most of our plans are presented prior to this, that this goes into parklands. So that's my purpose, and I apologize for making the public have to go through it for a second time.
Thank
Your
you.
worship, just quickly before the presentation by staff, when it gets to the reconsideration of the motion, I'll walk council through that. Okay,
Thank you. Mr. Harding.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not sure what I'm representing, but if council would like me to redo the report that was on council that night, in which motions are up for reconsideration, is that?
It was just if you wanted to explain anything further to Councillor Kipp. So if that's not necessary, we can move into the reconsideration.
If Councillor Kipp has any questions on our report, absolutely, Councillor Kipp, I could explain
Okay.
things. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Curry.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion will be that Councillor Kipp requests reconsideration under 33.1 of Council Procedure Bylaw of Motion 30617 for Council to direct staff to look at development options for a portion of 1150 Nanaimo Lakes Road north of the Parkway, and that staff receive public input for developing the property, including developing affordable housing along the eastern edge of the property fronting Harewood Mines Road. So that motion will need to be made by Councillor Kipp. He could just say what I said, and then it needs to be seconded, and then debate can happen.
Yep. Councillor Kipp.
Well, Your Worship, the way I read the motion is in the Parkway receive public input in developing the property. I prefer that the property gets turned into parkland, and I have an alternate motion, but do we have to reconsider this? Because that's what I've asked for, Mrs. Gurry.
Yes, you do.
So,
I can speak.
thank you very much. So,
Did you want me to speak? The reason it needs to be reconsidered is that it's on the floor now, like it's been moved and seconded and passed at the last council meeting. So in order for you to propose an alternate motion, first you need to have that one back on the floor and to be reconsidered and possibly defeated before you can then change direction.
yeah, and if the motion is passed, it would continue along the path of the affordable housing study.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
And if it's defeated, you can then go move to your alternate motion if you have one prepared. And I actually missed a step that delegations do need to speak before you can move that motion, Councillor Kipp.
Yes.
And it will need to be seconded once you do move it. So first we'll go to the delegations. And
Delegations.
then
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Curry. So we have two delegations. The first one is Mr. Jeff Solomon.
So we're going to hear him before we speak?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, Jeff Solomon, 655 6th Street, and thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. So with the last council meeting, there was the motion that's being discussed had come up, and there was certainly some concerns expressed about the direction that that this seemed to be going in terms of the possibility of development in what pretty much everybody considers as being part of Colliery Dam Park. So with that in mind, and with that concern, we decided to ask for a reconsideration of that direction, and that's being done today, and I really do very much appreciate that. We also started a petition, and I've handed it to staff, so you could look at that if you so wish. It wasn't very difficult to get quite a number of people saying that they were very concerned about this issue. In a couple of very short days, we had about 180 people, and we would have continued on, but it was very, very clear what the direction of the community was, that they wished for this particular portion to remain as park. It was a good chance to connect with the community about the issue. A lot of things that have gone on with regards to Colliery Dam have been very, very confusing, and this was too. There had never been previously, to my knowledge, a suggestion that we may have development in this portion of the, again, what has always been considered as being part of park. So the results from that information that I gathered was very, very clear. It basically supported what staff had said, that was the staff recommendation, that it was to be designated as parkland as part of the Calgary Dam. Some on council said the same thing. Certainly some of the community groups that were consulted previously basically said the same thing, and the survey said the same thing. So I think there's, for the most part, every bit of feedback that we've received with regards to this issue has been solid. That this particular issue, we do not wish to lose another chunk of our park. We've had significant intrusions, and to see some other part of it carved out at this stage would be devastating for a lot of people, including myself. So at the same time, during a little bit of discussion that we had with the community, it did come up with regards to the greater parcels. I mean, this is part of the parcels. It was part of the previous survey regarding the Greater Nanaimo Water District lands, which is a very extensive, large chunk of property, as you all know. And again, I just wanted to feed back what we've heard and have basically been verified so far from the survey and the information that staff have received, is that pretty much everybody really wishes to see this preserved as park as well. Certainly we needed to consider the option of what was to be designated because we hope that this will be taken off the table and now be designated. But the greater area, again, it's fairly consistent in terms of the feedback that we've received, is that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to retain a green space and a park for this part of the community. There has been, as you know very, very well, tremendous development throughout Nanaimo, tremendous development on the south end of Nanaimo. And this area that we're talking about will service has serviced our community for a long, long period of time, but not been designated as such. We're hoping very much so, that it actually becomes part of a greater green space available to its seemingly endless number of people that are moving here. So, but that's all I wanted to say. If there was any questions, by all means, I'm quite prepared.
Councillor Kipp?
Your main concern is that entire area on the map shown there goes to parkland.
Well, it's a two-part. It was broken up into two parts in terms of the discussion on the last council meeting. The recommendation, obviously, yes, that would be a tremendous goal. However, there was, at the last council meeting, there was a recommendation for options to consider development. So obviously we needed to pay attention to that because we didn't wish for that process to continue.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Mr. Robert Fuller.
Robert Fuller, 3350 Hammond Bay Road. I'm just going to go into a little bit of background on these lands for a minute. On November 22nd, 2010, at a council meeting, council directed staff to look into exploring park and recreational uses for the Greater Nanaimo Water District lands. On July the 25th, 2012, at a regular meeting of Parks, Recreation and Culture, the Commission asked staff to look into exploring park and recreational use for the Greater Nanaimo Water District lands. At the June 19th, 2017 meeting, Council approved City staff's recommendation to join the Coastal Douglas Fir and Associated Ecosystems Conservational Partnership, which is a multi-agency partnership created to allow for collaborative approach among stakeholders with an interest in the conservation of coastal Douglas fir ecosystems, of which the Greater Nanaimo Water District lands is a very good example of, being that it's second growth, mature Douglas fir, with rocky ridges bisecting the eastern portions, the Chase River running through the entire western section, and associated wetlands. One of the quotes that was put out in the news release when the city joined the Douglas Fir Conservational Partnership reads, "As Nanaimo residents, we are fortunate to live within the diverse coastal Douglas fir ecosystem. Joining the Conservation Partnership will provide the city an opportunity to improve collaboration with other stakeholders within this unique ecosystem and help us conserve it for future generations to enjoy." This was written by David Stewart, environmental planner for the city of Nanaimo. As a result of the surveys, the consultation, and the open house that was held last December, I am looking at, through discussion with stakeholders and community members, over 90% indicated in favor of seeing the Greater Nanaimo Water District lands designated for park use. Why the unexpected change of direction to development of the Greater Nanaimo Water District lands as opposed to prior council and park, recreation, and cultural directives? With this thought in mind, and given the fact that those consulted stated their preference, that would be the vast majority, why is this seemingly being dismissed when the thought of development, be it roads, residential housing, affordable housing, microhomes, etc., would not only go against these wishes, but would have serious consequences on this valuable ecosystem? Why are we even consulting with the community when this seems to be not taken at value? Of note on your agenda is the map on page 35. It would be that one. That one shows the lands sort of divvied up like a dog's breakfast. That was never shown at the open house. I never saw it before 2 Mondays ago. It's rather disturbing. This dog breakfast of a sectioning up of the land south of the Parkway, as I say, has never been put up until last Monday, and would seriously have evoked conversation at the open house, the online survey, and the consultation process. Why are we even at the point of discussing development on these lands, given what has previously occurred within Colliery Dams Park? It's beyond comprehension. The Greater Nanaimo Water District lands and its sensitive mature coastal Douglas fir ecosystem should be maintained fully intact for future generations to cherish and enjoy. As such, And in light of the wishes of our community, the 680 people that have signed my one petition, the 78 others that have handwritten their signatures, I would like to ask Council to prepare a motion and act on such to help conserve this valuable, unique ecosystem for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, thank you. Motion to receive the delegations. Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Kipp. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Kipp.
Well, I would like to reconsider the motion that was moved and seconded to look at development options for the portion of 1150 Nanaimo Lakes Road. And I don't know if I want to speak to that motion, or my hope is that it would be defeated, and then I could bring forward another motion to put the park, or put park designation on that land, the Greater Nanaimo Water District, as the public community engagement. And for 7 years now, we've been working towards that. Is now the time to talk of why I want to do this? Because I have about 10 reasons.
You get the motion on the floor.
So I'll move the motion
For reconsideration.
for reconsideration.
So it's been moved and seconded to reconsider the resolution of the previous meeting, 30617. Council has that in front of them. It was moved and seconded that Council direct staff to look at development options for a portion of 1150 Nanaimo Lakes Road north of the Parkway, and that staff receive public input for developing the property, including developing affordable housing along the eastern edge of the property fronting Harewood Mines Road. The motion carried.
Just to jump in before you vote, so you're voting on this motion, not just to reconsider. That precedent has already been set under the procedure bylaw. So you're voting on the motion. If it was to pass, as it did 2 weeks ago, you are directing staff to look at developmental opportunities for that land. If you oppose it and it's defeated, then it's gone, and that motion is off the table and off of staff's direction.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp, do you wish to speak to it now?
Yes, I can, if I can. So I'm speaking in opposition of the motion for this specific land. And I want to be perfectly clear that I see that some parkland in our community should be used and should be kept as inventory for possible future development. It's obvious that the community in the Harewood area really likes this piece of property. And I know since 2010, we've been working to try and get that into parkland. But I also understand that the city only has 5 incomes available to itself. And those incomes are, of course, taxation, and everybody's concerned about the rate of it. User fees, which are expensive. To use the pools are expensive, those type of things. And then there's grants from other levels of government, and depending how we see the world right now, whether those are coming, development cost charges, and the disposition of land. The school board is probably in a worse situation than us, where they, in fact, only have 2 incomes, what they are given from the government and what they can dispose of. And that's a concern to me when we dispose of the future. I've always thought that parkland could be available for development. Say, for example, on Dorman Road, out by number 2 Fire Hall, all along the parkland there, where there's the dog off-leash park and things, there's a steep bank land on what I'll call the north side of Dorman that could quite possibly service nonprofit organizations and buildings for all the things I like, judo clubs, karate clubs, or for dance studios, or for art studios, because that is a central part of Nanaimo, and that's kind of Nanaimo's park, okay, that whole central park there. So there's land there that is available, and it could be used for future use. The Greater Nanaimo Water District, to me, is a park use that is a natural park right now, or as natural as we can have here. It's a wildlife corridor that I haven't heard much talked about, and the wildlife can get from that end of town all the way down the Chase River and all the way through. They can come out down to the Nanaimo River estuary if that's kept green, except for that parkway. And so maybe we should, where the water passes under there, or we've got water lines to go through, we should have put more wildlife corridors, because there's deer getting hit there sometimes. So from my point of view, it is inventory. But then I'll go back 20 plus years for a fight that I know Councillor Bestwick's been involved with, Councillor Sherry, Councillor Holdham, where we talked about getting zoning on parkland and giving it those types of zoning that it can put its use to the proper community needs. Look at what we use. We can use parks for golf courses. We can use parks for mountain bike tracks, for pump tracks, for skateboard bowls. We can use it for services, for kitchens, to service ballpark areas and that. So there's multiple uses to park. But that inventory and that the Greater Nanaimo Water District lands to me. And I understand staff's point. This is a holding. This is land. This is a land mass that they can see income for. Now it gets back to another thing, our initiative that we have going on in housing right now. We're looking at it. And I want to make myself clear. There's a thing called affordable housing. Everybody uses this, affordable housing. That is what the median income in our community can afford. That's the term for affordable housing. So there's a lot of different types of housing on either side. So there's millionaire housing, and there's emergency shelter, and there's transitional housing. So the term I'll use always, affordable housing, is that with the median income in our community can afford to live in. And those statistics are available in our census data. But this has a real connection to the mountain, connection to the watershed of the Chase River that has been impacted. I think of a few things that have been done to it over the last years, pipes going through that park, different things. So for me, I would like to defeat this motion and bring back a separate motion to put this into parkland. It still can be taken out of parkland. And that's the point that I brought up Hold'em and Sherry and older councillors. Anything to do with parkland must go to public assent. And I would vote against it going to that approval process, alternative approval. I would always think it would go to one of those referendums. And referendums are expensive, but that's a cost of democracy at that point. So for me, I would like to see that this motion is defeated as it was coined. Then we would go down to protect this land. And then I think, again, retask staff to look at some of the lands that are available in Nanaimo to actually dispose of. Again, there's lands that we can use for building the reserves, for buying other land, for doing things with. So I don't want to go on forever, but we have 5 incomes in Nanaimo, 1,000 light items. Our costs are rising. Our infrastructure is starting to go down. We do need affordable housing. There's a lot of old people in Nanaimo, my age and older, that need some affordable housing. Their incomes are small. They don't have the benefit of a full pension. And that's about 75% of our population. So land like this could be used for some forms of housing or some forms of revenue for the city. But it should be parkland, and it should have to go through a big public process to be put into development land. So that's my purpose, and hopefully the council can see that to defeat the motion that's on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yocum.
Thank you. Just want to state my position hasn't changed from 2 weeks ago that, first of all, the delegates and the people must state my apologies to the people regarding unnecessary stress this has caused. The people have been through enough regarding Colliery. The last of the 3 to 5 years has been tough on many, and many have fought to preserve this park, including myself and many people in this room and some at this table. We have the opportunity right now to enhance this gem. So let's do the right thing, and I concur with Councillor Kipp's words. Hopefully we defeat this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
So my intent when the motion came up the last time was I could see the staff report going through. No one came up to talk about the Greater Nanaimo Water District lands south, except for my brother, and even he mentioned most, if not all, go to park. I don't think a lot of people paid attention to the report. I see some now are paying attention. What I wanted to do was get people's attention, piss people off, get them mad, and get them to look at this. Because I read that report. I also read the survey results. And on the survey results, it states, also heard some support for affordable housing on portions of the property already disturbed along Harewood Mines Road. So I think that's where the affordable housing thing came up. Personally, I've been talking about that piece of property for a couple of years to quite a number of people. I thought it might be a great option to subdivide and sell it at market value. Get some money together and put it strictly to Colliery Park. Since then, we've created a strategic infrastructure reserve. And I'm thinking we may just want to create a strategic park reserve. We have a park reserve, but it has $40,000 in it right now, which isn't going to do many of the upgrades to Mafia we want to see, and so on and so on and so forth. So yes, the survey was done. It had 123 people. That's great. It's not huge, but it did have 123 people. But if you talk about not dismissing the survey, then you cannot also dismiss the fact that many people talked about the potential to subdivide. As Councillor Kipp said, if all of this becomes parkland, we can still take it out. But like him, I would not recommend the alternate approval process. Sometimes that can be useful for small, easily dealt with items. And it saves the city a lot of money in having a huge referendum. Other things it should not be used for. It was used for the water treatment center, which I believe it should have never been used for, but it was. So those properties can come out. So I wanted to clarify that, because I'm going to support withdrawing the motion. And it did piss people off, and I hope people are aware. We've got Lindley Valley out there that could be shaved off. I don't want to see that. We've got other parks that could be shaved off in the future. I don't want to see that. I think we have other opportunities, and by getting the public involved in this discussion more and more openly, I'm hoping that our parks will grow and that our parks that exist will be saved.
Thank you. So I'm about to call the question, but I just wanted to say it appears to me that I'll probably be the only one voting in favor of the motion itself. But whatever the case, I did that because I've been watching a couple of good friends of mine trying to find accommodation in Nanaimo recently. There was a situation just the other night where a young couple went to make an offer on a house. It was $289,000, 2 bedrooms and a bath. It's an older house. It was $289,000. They bid $320,000. Didn't get it. That's the reality of real estate in Nanaimo right now. I watched a couple of folks who were trying to find places to rent. Just a basement suite, a clean, dry basement suite that was free of mold and that their family could enjoy. One of them's having to couch surf, having to put her belongings in storage. She can't find a place. Another one was fortunate enough, but it was pretty slim pickings. And the place she's ended up in is not really that nice. All I was looking for was, is there a possibility that a portion of this land could be used for something like, I don't know, half a dozen lots, a dozen lots along 7th, that we could see ourselves providing to Habitat for Humanity, or somebody like that could build some simple family homes that would also benefit the community for generations to come. That's all I was asking. So I'm going to call the question now. Oh, Councillor Bestwick. Go ahead.
Thank you. The motion of 2 weeks ago, in my opinion, was ill-conceived and poorly contemplated. And it was almost slapstick, in my opinion. Parks and open space is a critical piece of this city's growth. I keep hearing that we are so blessed to live where we live. And I keep hearing about how many people would like to also share in living here. And I certainly hope that they are able to find the necessities that they need to do it. In the meantime, my preference is not to destroy what has been gifted to us if we are in possession of it and own it and control its future. So when we're in control of something like a nature's preserve, nature's habitat. We talk about people, that's great. This is an unbelievable natural habitat. Unbelievable. And to mess with this in any way, in my opinion, is short-sighted and absolutely unnecessary. So my position has not changed, and it won't change as 2 weeks ago. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion has been moved. The motion has been seconded. I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? Joe Mayor McKay in favor. All those opposed? Hold your hands. Councillor Yocum, Councillor Bestwick, Councillor Kipp, Councillor Fuller, and Councillor Armstrong opposed. Motion is defeated. Councillor Kipp.
Your Worship, I appreciate your point, because it is important about our land inventory and that. But like I say, I know from this end of town that this is it's an important piece. So therefore, I'll make a motion. I'll try and read it. And I think staff can help clean it up, and I think it's there in front of us. I'm going to read a shortened version of what I have here. Is that whereas the community, previous councils, and this council support the dedication of the GNWD land to park, whereas heavy recreational use, whereas the OCP sees it as parks and open space, therefore be it resolved that the council dedicate the lands, the GNWD lands, I think that is 1150 and 801 Nanaimo Lakes Road, to park use, and start the process to have those lands rezoned for park use. And a greater written motions in front of you. And I don't know if the only thing I'll speak to on it if I can, if I get a seconder for it.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Within the regional growth strategy that we're tied to as the RDN representatives, in 2008, our OCP changed and took lands like the Lindley Valley and a few other pieces of land and left them for development inside of our borders. And what they have done, and we have done as a regional growth strategy, is protected the forestry lands all in our borders around all of the communities within the regional district under the regional growth strategy for rural resource lands. So they're dedicated to future use of resource and some development. It's tough right now for someone who has lived out there for decades, people who have hundreds of acres, to split up some of their family and give the plot of land to their family, because what we've moved is all the development inside the borders of the community. That's how Lindley Valley got taken from urban containment to urban reserve in the last OCP. So this type of thing, as Councillor Bestwick mentioned, is hugely important. And I know if Councillor Hong was here, he's been talking about keeping some of these lands and talking about that too. So from my point of view, with the regional growth strategy the way it is, our current OCP and the guidance that this is important for us to protect this land as park use. And again, I say, I may be one that brings it up for some development later, but it would go through a huge public process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I would just like to request a potential amendment, and it's in the last paragraph where it indicates, therefore, be it resolved that council dedicate the northern portions of 1150 and 801 Nanaimo Lakes Road as park. I would propose that we change to park road as park and open space versus just simply park. And I don't, to distinguish it just as park, and I might need staff clarification on whether or not open space, because if you read the paragraph prior, whereas Plan Nanaimo and the official community plan currently designated these lands as park and open space. So are we taking open space away, or by virtue of be it resolved?
Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff's read of that motion would be a very technical step in terms of actually dedicating the lands as park under a park bylaw. And that's the step that council needs to take in order for the lands to be protected, and ultimately so that in the future, if any portion of those lands are to be disposed of, we would need to go through the approval of the electorate, as has been mentioned this evening, I heard by Councillor Kipp. So it's not parks and open space, which is an OCP designation, but the actual designation of land as park, which is done by bylaw, is a technical step, and that's how staff would interpret that motion. We would come back then with a subsequent amendment bylaw for council's consideration.
So we're taking away open space. We're removing open space designated as park and open space.
Sorry, there's three different things. So there's the official community plan designation. The lands are currently designated as park and open space. They will remain in the OCP as designated as park and open space. This motion recommends that 2 further steps be taken to further protect those lands as park in the long term. The first being the most substantial step is designating the park by bylaw, or dedicating it, by bylaw, as park lands. And again, that's the step where once it's completed and the associated bylaws adopted, it can't be removed or sold without approval of the electorate. The third step is, and as I heard mentioned this evening, in the last 10 years, the city's developed zoning for its parkland, and it would be to actually take the step and zone this land as park, so it's clear in both the official community plan, it's clear in the zoning bylaw, and it's also protected by bylaw.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, a couple of things. First off, I want to clarify that this is not just about the north portion. This is also about the south portion, as Councillor Kipp's motion mentioned. Councillor Kipp changed the motion from that to something a bit different, and he mentioned the southern GNW lands in particular.
Can we have is there a map that shows the entire GNW portion?
It was up there.
Your Worship?
Yes, Ms. Sammer.
The whereas clauses include a legal description, and Councillor Kipp had asked to reconsider the motion that pertained to the parcel of land north of the Parkway, not the remainder parcel. There's another motion on the books for that. So this is the whereas clause legal description is for the triangle up there. Dale can describe it. Mr. Lindsay can describe it a little bit better.
I want all of it. Everything green and red, except for the highway that goes through it, and the power line. I guess we can't really do anything with the power line, can we? I wanted that it should be parkland. It should be contiguous right through, and somehow making sure it's contiguous through to that other piece over the highway, even if it's overpass corridors we build. And that's what happened. People remember that even though it was GNWD land, it was considered parkland by people because it was a water board land that should not be impacted. And Mr. Verosco and some of the people from Harewood a century ago wanted that land protected for the public. And that's my concern. This is a century later, or 66 years later, where the Greater Nanaimo Water Board, with all the old Harewood guys, wanted this protected. It was such a bright and intelligent thing to do. And yes, Nanaimo was big, and yes, we have a lot of square kilometers, but this is an important piece. Remember, it was part of a water supply, and if worse comes to worse, in an earthquake, there's water. If the water's clean in that area, it's usable. It can be cleaned up. So, thank you.
Your Worship, if I may, I'm going to suggest two things because we have some procedural parliamentary issues in front of us. So Council has defeated the motion pertaining to the north parcel, and the motion that you have in front of you now is to take the step to designate it as park under the bylaw and change the zoning bylaw. I recommend that you address that and then move a second motion to address the other segment, and we can speak to that afterwards and explain what steps have been taken on that parcel. But because in preparation for the reconsideration of this motion, staff and our advice to Councillor Kipp, and in preparation of this motion, focus primarily or exclusively on the northern parcel. So our recommendation is you vote on that with the legal description and then move a secondary motion or allow staff to present on what the results were of the vote a few weeks ago on the other segment. Good with that.
Gord was on, sorry.
Councillor Fuller.
Yeah. So with that explanation, I could support that. The main point is to bring up when Councillor Kipp talked about reconsidering the motion, I initially thought he was going to reconsider the whole, but not just the north.
My miscommunication.
Yeah, but then staff did a great job on doing an amended motion. I think that's good. I had hoped it would include this, but I also get the rationale on having to do another motion to bring that back up. And so after, when this is either passed or defeated, either myself or Councillor Kipp will make that motion in order to get staff input on that. I also recognize when we, the whole comment in here about affordable housing, people are misconceived about what affordable housing is. They think it's all homeless people getting subsidized housing. There's a huge continuum, such as what Mayor McKay was talking about, and it fits anywhere. Yes, it does. Affordable housing is based on median income, and that can be, there's a continuum. It's not just homeless, it's not just supportive. I'll send it to you, Kathy. I see you shaking your head. But we have other properties, and I think that's been mentioned. We have other properties in the city's land reserve that could be used for that, and we can deal with that in the future. So I'm going to support Councillor Kipp's motion.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, for my purposes, I would just like to deal with 1150 Nanaimo Lakes Road separately, as that was the motion that I thought was going to be before and the one I've done my research on. Just my point.
On the northern portion.
The northern portion.
Thank you. See no further speakers. I'm going to call the question.
Are we doing seriatim on the two pieces then on this? Could I ask a clarification on that? If Councillor Armstrong wants to vote on a single?
Yes. So, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Kipp, my advice would be that we vote on the one portion, the northern portion, because there was two other motions that did go through last week that deal with more public consultation, et cetera, on the remainder of the lands. It didn't do anything with them other than to go forward. So until we get those exact motions, which we're looking for the draft minutes to see what exactly passed and didn't, your reconsideration dealt with just that northern portion. So if we could just vote on that for now and then proceed, let you know what procedurally we have to do for you to consider the rest.
So 1150 and not 801.
It is 801 and 1150 Nanaimo Lakes Road, and that is included in that whereas clause's legal description. It completely covers that triangle in the northern portion on the north side of the parkway.
Okay, so it's just those
So
two pieces.
there's agreement from you, the mover and the seconder, to just vote on that.
Those two pieces.
Yes, that piece up there, yeah.
Was the seconder? Councillor Bestwick? Okay. Are you in agreement? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Show Mayor McKay opposed. Motion carries. Next one. Do you wish a subsequent motion? Ms. Sammer.
I'd like to ask Mr. Lindsay to take us through the motions that were adopted last week and how that operates.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think for clarification, Council did a number of things on the meeting of the 10th. One was to direct staff to commence discussions, negotiations with Search and Rescue regarding the GNWD offices at 1151 Nanaimo Lakes Road, and those discussions are moving forward. But secondly, and probably most important to the discussion this evening, is Council actually gave direction to take this conceptual plan that's on the screen here for the land south of the Parkway back out to the community for further review and comment as a proposed land use designation. And I would note that the lands south of the Parkway are different in terms of the OCP. The lands north, as I already mentioned this evening, are currently designated parks and open space in the official community plan, and have been for many years. The lands south of the Parkway are designated as rural resource lands that are not currently designated as parks and open space in the official community plan, and it's for that reason that staff did not recommend taking the ultimate step of dedicating the entire thing as park and rezoning the entire thing as park, but rather to take this interim step of going back out to the community and soliciting feedback on the concept plan that's in front of you on the schedule.
Thank you. Are there any proposed motions? Ms. Sammer.
So, as it currently stands, Council has directed staff to go out and do that consultation. My recommendation is to allow staff to go back out, do more consultation, and then if you want to take the next step of doing the same type of designation as you've done for the northern parcel, we do that in a month or 2 months' time.
Why wait? Thank you very much. Councillor Fuller.
I'm thinking we could save a lot of staff time and energy and do this now. And as has been mentioned, if we choose to take pieces out of the park designation, we can do it through referendum and that. Question to Mr. Lindsay through yourself. You mentioned the properties being zoned rural resource. I got to find the map. I know I got it here somewhere.
So, sorry, Your Worship, just while Councillor Fuller is looking at it, if I said zone rural resource, I misspoke. They're designated rural resource in the official community plan, and they're zoned, I believe, agricultural. I'd have to look that up.
So that changes everything. They're not zoned, they're just designated, which, as we've seen, you could designate something park in the official community plan and change that with a motion. So I would like to actually make a motion, but I also recognize Snuneymuxw has a huge stake in this. So I do want their input on this. But they're the ones I want the input from. So if I could frame a motion to the point that the southern Greater Nanaimo Water District lands be designated or rezoned, I guess we'd have to go through a rezoning process for that. Can we designate them as park and open space?
Your Worship, to Councillor Fuller, I think the additional step that you would take, if Council decided that you wanted to ultimately designate and protect all of the lands as park, the additional step would be to amend the official community plan. So move from the designation of rural resource to that of parks and open space. And then you would take the two steps that you just identified on the northern lands, which are dedication of the lands as park through a park dedication bylaw and rezoning of the properties to park zoning.
Okay, so can I make a motion to that effect of changing the OCP to designate Greater Nanaimo Water Districts as whatever it was, parks and open space?
Your Worship?
Notice of motion.
Ms. Curry.
Yeah.
Through you to Councillor Fuller, I would recommend a notice of
Okay.
motion, and then that way we can look into it and make sure that we've got the wording and everything right, rather than doing it on the fly right now. Let's maybe do a notice of motion.
Awesome,
next council
good
meeting.
point, totally agree. So I'll just make a notice of motion at this point.
Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. Just a question and a comment. My first would be a question to yourself, the staff. In our consultation process, I'm part of my ignorance. There's various processes, and when I used to be with Snuneymuxw, I'm obviously aware of consultations that actually mean nothing. They're empty, basically empty. So I'm not saying we're doing it empty. So what does our process look like? And my comment I'd like to make is, if after a proper consultation, which I'm sure we'll do, that's where I'd like to be making decisions based on. I'm sort of struggling right now with these motions on the fly, but I'm glad because it's just. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. I won't get into my reasoning. So around the consultation, please.
Sarah.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate Council agreeing to do this as a notice of motion so that staff can go back and prepare and be able to respond to the approach that you're suggesting. There has been engagement with Snuneymuxw First Nation over the last year. We have presented and shared the archaeological studies and other work with them, both through Parks and Recreation and through Mr. Lindsay's shop as well. And I believe we have given a referral to them as well, and we need to follow up on that. So there's additional work with Snuneymuxw First Nation on those parcels of land, but we have been engaging with them and sharing information.
Great, but also the name will absolutely, but also the public at large absolutely as well. But for that portion on this side, great. So we're going to start that process, and then and when we hear the people, that's what be better decision making than on the fly. Thanks.
Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I just concur with Councillor Yoakum, but I just wanted to get some more information on the agricultural designation as well, because we don't have much agricultural land, so I would like information on that as well.
Mr. Harding.
Actually, Mr. Lindsay can comment on the agricultural reserve better than me.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Lindsay can comment on that.
And maybe I've confused the debate more than I needed to, but I just mentioned that the zoning on the existing property, I believe, is agricultural, large lot agricultural zoning. So it doesn't mean that the lands are in the agricultural land reserve or appropriate for farming. It's just the zoning that we have on them. And ultimately, my point was that if council wanted to take the steps that it did on the north, that a rezoning to parks, one of our park zoning would be the appropriate step.
Thank you. So there is no motion on the floor. So we'll go to the next item. So we'll go on to the next item, and that is question period. Agenda items only, please.
Ron Boland, Nanaimo. I have been totally frustrated in many of these discussions.
Mr. Boland, you're going to have to get closer to the microphone.
Okay. I've been totally frustrated in some of these discussions when we're talking about housing alternative, land available for housing alternative, and yet I cannot find an inventory of land owned by public bodies in the city of Nanaimo, which should take half an hour on the computer using the BC assessment data to find out what land is owned by the public because it pays no taxes, and what is on it because either there is a building or something on it, improvements, or there aren't. So that vacant land, where it's at, how much there is, how big the parcels are, is a trivial matter, and yet we're sitting here talking about what alternatives do we have. I find this incredible. Could we please generate an inventory?
For staff. Ms. Sammer. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Certainly the city has a land management strategy, which includes a list of all of our existing properties, which is a publicly available document, and I can happy to share that with Mr. Boland.
Thank you.
Question?
Okay.
You have a question for the delegation?
Yes. Are you asking the same question about provincial land?
Oh, I'm asking about all publicly owned
Anything
land,
we know of,
right?
any in
School
our inventory
board,
know of?
it's all owned by us.
That's what they borrow on, your land.
Well, from the city's point of view, I think Mr. Lindsay has got a point. You're going to go offline with Mr. Boland, provide him with that information?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don Bonner from Nanaimo. My question today is actually again on question period. Are the minutes from that you passed today in the meeting, do they become the official record, or is the video of this meeting the official record?
Perhaps staff can give us the answer to that question from an official point of view.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the delegation, the minutes are the official record of the council meeting.
So the minutes actually don't contain the questions that the actual people asked during question period. They contain references to things that they're talking about. So and again, my problem is coming up. We asked questions at your last meeting of June 16th. A month later, the only answer that I got was to an question I asked on March 6th. And there's no official record of what my questions actually were. So how am I going to know that I'm having answers to my questions if they're actually not in the official record?
Ms. Samar.
The delegation or the question period person. We don't do verbatim minutes, so there's the video record is a corporate record of the meeting, and the minutes reflect the summary. They're not meant to be verbatim repetition of the questions being asked, and it's question period for council. So what answers and approach that council takes during the question period is for the delegations that come up. If you pass a motion or direct staff to do something, then we'll follow up on it. But question period is for you. It's not for staff. So if there's a disconnect, then you need to let us know what information needs to be followed up on so staff is able to carry that out. We have action reports on all the motions that are made at every council meeting, and we ensure that the business of council gets carried out. How you want to deal with a follow-up to question period is a political issue and is your relationship with the electorate when they come to the podium.
Sir.
So thank you for that. So I guess the question is, when we do ask questions here, we still, again, a month later, we're not getting the answers to the questions that we asked. And I'd like to know what the policy is on council to do that. Because I asked this question last month. What is your policy regarding the questions that you asked, and can we get the answers to them? It's now been a month. I was promised answers to those questions on June 16th, and I haven't got any. So I think this is something that council should look at. Staff is very correct. This is our questions to you. And I think you really need to look at the way that you're doing your question period, because in the past, the questions were written down in the minutes verbatim. They were taken down and they were in the minutes, and now they're not. So I'd like to know if council has any plans to actually pass a proper policy regarding questions and answers when they come up here. Because right now, the minutes could just as easily have said, Don Bonner opened his mouth and words came out. And we would have still no official record. So I think this is something that's important, because this is really only our way as members of the public to ask questions of you and put them on record. And they're not coming on the record and they're not being answered. So here's the question. Does council have any idea in the near future of passing a policy regarding questions and question period?
So I can tell you that it's not been contemplated. Councillor Armstrong, do you wish to answer the delegation?
Yeah, I do have a concern around that as well. I believe that if people do have questions, that it should be recorded, and we should have a time frame to reply back. I think that's an important part of democracy and one that I think we're missing. Thank you.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Sorry, my tardiness. Call would crawl. If the questions are valid and they want to be on a public record, I think a lot of the citizens just want a question answered, and I think that's what question period is. If you want to form part of the public record, send us an email about your question and ask for us to put it on correspondence. That will give you a permanent position with your question verbatim, with your name, your signature, your date on our public record. That is all I suggest you. If your question is that important that you want it to form the public record, I suggest you email it to us and request that we direct it to somewhere in staff that it forms public record as correspondence. And I recommend that to anybody that wants it as a formal piece of correspondence, because we could make mistakes even if it's wording from you as question periods, because when we go over these minutes, it could be wrong. And then if you're not here to defend those correspondence or those remarks, then it forms an incorrect public record. So my suggestion to you and everybody else that's in the public that wants a formal record of it written, send it to Mayor and Council and request that it goes on our correspondence. And I think that was one of the questions you have. I've been starting to do that with some of the letters that we do get from the SPCA and all the other ones that the clerk put it on as correspondence, so it forms the actual public record, if that helps.
Well, it does, and that's
Great,
an
thank
excellent idea. Thank you, which is why I sent the questions in the very next day to Mayor and Council. And I still don't have any answers to them. So I will request next time that it goes on correspondence.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sir, I'm confused here because on the 16th, at our meeting on the 16th, you asked a question about a question you had asked on March 6th. And
That's the only one I did get an answer to, and I thank you for that.
Okay, great.
Your Worship.
Okay.
You did your job.
Your Worship, and a lot of the questions I think that Mr. Bonner asked that evening were responded to, but a lot of them were in-camera information, I recall. You responded that you weren't able to respond because they were in-camera information, and I think there may have been a follow-up email from him that you need to look at.
Oh, thank you. Ms. Samra?
I want to stress that emails to Mayor and Council are emails to Mayor and Council. It's at your choosing to respond to emails to Mayor and Council or not. If there are information requests, you refer them to staff, and then staff can provide you with that. But that's a communication between you and the electorate, the emails to Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Sir?
So thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I was there.
I'm sorry, Councillor Fuller.
That's okay. I was just going to respond to the whole thing. Actually, our CAO is right. These are questions to council. If I can't answer a question, I'm going to say I don't know. And I might suggest to the person, I don't like to suggest too many things, that they contact staff and ask that same question, because then it is on the public record through an email to staff. Our staff are listed, their divisions are listed. It would be better if they went through the CAO or a higher level, but they're there. They're on the city website, emails and everything. So if I can't answer a question, I'm just going to say no, I don't know.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Yeah. I'd like to talk to that subject of question period. Is question period providing a valid format for people to address council? Is it purposeful? Does a question period become, and sometimes it's debate, sometimes it's attack, sometimes it's thanking, or not as much thanking, but sometimes so is question period really valid now in this type of business meeting? I mean, we get emails. I may be called an imbecile because there's freighters parked in Departure Bay that I have nothing to do with, and so I don't respond. I get other things than that. So it's a tough one, and we get, even during the slow time of the summer when people are busy, we're getting 50, 60 emails a day. You probably get 100 and something sometimes because we don't get them all. And when I hear staff say it's just council questions, staff is aware we get those. They get them, they see them, and they hopefully try and respond to them. I mean, I've asked questions and got motions that are 7 months old. I'm trying to be as patient as I can with them. They're 4 yes/no questions, but they take a while to get the yes/nos. So I appreciate it, but I wonder, is our meeting format still valid? Kids don't want to sit through it. Nobody under a certain age really wants to sit through these meetings. So I wonder if the business meetings are valid. Many communities have gone to daytime meetings, and so the public doesn't even have a chance to get to the City of Vancouver, City of Victoria. They meet in the daytime, 10 o'clock in the morning. RDN is now switching committee of the whole to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I wonder, so for me, I think to Mr. Bonner's question, he's looking for some responses to questions. He's trying to get an answer. I think all of us at this table are the same thing. We're all trying to get answers all the time. Whether they suit my needs or don't suit my needs is whether I respond. But I kind of get turned off responding when, even if you stay a response, you might get a whole novel back again on the same subject over again. And honestly, it's hard to keep up to all the stuff and try and answer everybody. So if I haven't got back to people for the last years, I apologize. But it's tough. But I wonder the validity of question period now. Is it good enough? Is it enough? And I would suggest that it really needs some revision. Question period should almost come before you vote on anything. Because now it's just you going, well, you just voted on this, why did you do that? And so for me, should the question be, we move delegations from the end or to that to up in front or to the topic. So maybe we have to look at question period. Is there a question from the public on this subject? Boom, no, thanks, move on. So that might be a revision, I don't know, but I appreciate the input. Thank you.
Thank you. For the final time, question period.
Thank you. Sydney Robertson, Nanaimo. I have a question about the motion that you reconsidered tonight about the parkland. I'm very happy with how the vote went. But my question is for Councillor Fuller. This was brand new information to me and I think to many other people that apparently you had an idea in mind all the time. And so I would like to know flat out, was this a plan of yours to talk about that sliver for redevelopment and then you knew that someone would bring it for reconsideration?
No, it wasn't a plan at the time, because as I said, I've been thinking that that might actually be a good idea with that sliver, but I've since come to the conclusion that there are better ways to create reserves for parkland than cutting up existing parkland. So it wasn't a plan, but when I read the report and I saw no one coming up here to discuss it, no one. And that report states clearly rural resource can be developed in the future. In order to get it brought back and discussed, that's when I came up with the plan. Piss people off, get them discussing it, it worked. There was a huge amount of chatter on Facebook, and I did not reply to it all, because I'm of the opinion if you want to know what my idea is, you come and talk to me, you don't try and talk to me on Facebook. A few people did know what I was planning because I respect them enough to let them know. But I don't have time to let everybody know. And yeah, ultimately it was a plan and it worked.
So it was a plan?
Ultimately.
And you were happy with your plan when it stood 2 weeks ago that it was not parkland? That was part of the plan?
Yeah. My plan was to get the discussion going. It got the discussion going. That was my plan. And it worked.
I got a question. I want to answer.
Yeah, but Councillor Hall, you can't. But the question was directed to Councillor Fuller.
I know, but she directed it at the wrong person. It was actually me that suggested the sliver. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
So, and the reason I suggested that was because we were supposed to come back when we directed staff to go look at this property as a master plan. It wasn't made known to us. I didn't look at the official community plan of what that property was supposed to look like. We didn't have that discussion when we sent staff away to discuss this Greater Nanaimo Water District lands as a whole. Nowhere when we sent that motion to staff to look at those lands were they saying, we're not going to look at this part because this is going to be dedicated as parkland. That wasn't the discussion. It was to look at the entire property. That is where the idea came from. Whether it was parkland or not, it was the Greater Nanaimo Water District lands that we sent staff to do for a master plan. The reason I turned that down, I probably would have still voted for parkland, but we came back for a master plan of the entire property. That night, we were coming to discuss where the search and rescue was going to go. That was it. That parkland part that we're going to designate as parkland was thrown in there. It wasn't something that we sent staff out to do. It was a master plan. And I'm going to keep coming up with ideas until we get a master plan. This doesn't say that I want that sliver to be done. It was an idea. It was an option. We didn't get options. What we did with the waterfront walkway, we're getting options. What we're doing with number 1 Port Drive, we're getting options. And we're hearing from the public. I'm hearing from other parts of what it could be. We have other properties. If I'm not mistaken, staff said they've got about $40 million worth of properties they want to buy that would benefit Nanaimo. We're going to get $40 million, not to mention some of the other public that wants us to buy the watershed. So we need money And the best way to generate money if we have the land is to generate some money from some of the land. And with the waterfront property, let it be known.
Councillor, I've got to bring you back to.
Okay, well, I just want to say.
The question was for Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, and I wanted to correct her that it wasn't Councillor Fuller that said about that sliver. It was me.
Thank you, but I think myself and as well as a lot of people were quite surprised at how that discussion went. So my question to you then is, why was that the first that we were hearing about this?
Because it was the first I heard of it.
So my next question is really, this was...
Yes.
Can I ask, through you to staff? I was blindsided. I don't think I was...
So was I.
Okay.
No, I wasn't blindsided by the report and the recommendations that came from staff. I wasn't blindsided by that at all.
I was.
I was blindsided by a couple of councillors.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, just to that it never came up. It did come up. It was actually in the report that Parks and Rec brought. I read the bit where some people wanted.
Do you know how many?
I have no idea. All I know is 123 people filled out the survey. That's all I know. And I know 90% of them wanted it as park. So how many actually thought it might be an idea to develop it? I don't know.
You didn't want to find out before you subverted the process.
Well, I did not subvert any process. Actually, what I did was bring it back, and now we are going to look at the southern portion. So I accomplished my goal. So I'm quite happy with it. People may get choked at me, and that's fine.
I think that's an accurate read. Okay,
Yeah, good. You. I'm glad, because it gets the word out.
Thank you, ma'am.
Rebecca Chan, Nanaimo. Councillor Hong, how do you expect to bring us effective, constructive ideas for things like the dam if you're not reading the OCP for that property?
We sent staff back to give us a master plan of the entire property. So when I want to make a decision, I want to do it as an entire property. The same reason how the public jumped on us for trying to put an event center on somewhere that wasn't a master plan. So we said, well, let's do a master plan. So, and when we do master plans, I like to see options.
And again, we do a lot of community consultation, and it takes up a lot of citizen time that's unpaid. I've been a part of a neighborhood plan. It takes up a lot of time. It's fantastic. It's worth it when you listen. But again, what I'm wondering is if we make those documents and you're not taking those into account when you're making decisions.
We didn't see those documents. That's what I was saying.
The official city plan.
No, we didn't see the consultation process.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Motion for adjournment, please. Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Hong. The special meeting of council is now adjourned.
10-minute recess? Yeah. Just